So it's an incredible schus to be back with all of you, all of us, this incredible group. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege to speak to Yidden wherever I get to speak to them. It's a privilege to sit with Jews for a holy reason all the time. And particularly a group like this, which is a group of people who have been lifted above and almost by force, selected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu for a very special kind of nisayon, and therefore compelled to grow in a way that other parents don't have to, in a way that other people don't have to, is extra special. If it's possible to close the door, just so you're quiet. So we have limited time together, and I was thinking, what's the best way to maximize the time? I was hoping there'd be a few more men we could sing a niggin also, but I don't know. Huh?
It might still
come. Okay, so we'll see maybe at the end. But a question that was sent to me beforehand, which I think some of us might be feeling, is how are we to connect to Matan Torah when some of our children might have no connection, or seemingly no connection to the Torah? That's a very, very painful question. Everybody's getting ready for Shavuos. It's the day that Am Yisrael became Am Yisrael, and at the same time, sometimes we feel that in our own Dalet Amis, there's a e-Kabbalah, there's like a lack, maybe the Chas V'Shalom, the opposite of Kabbalah Satar, like the rejection of it. So I wanted to share something with you that I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with you if I didn't know who you were. And what I mean when I say who you were and who you are people who are not capable anymore of thinking with what we call katnas d'moichin, small brains. You're not capable. You've all been people who, whatever small-minded ways of thinking you had, you've been forced to drop all of that. You're free from this, which means you're a geula group. By one way or another, you've been compelled and pushed into the light of the redemption, into the light of geula. Chazal say, I may have mentioned this in the past, I'm not sure, in some form or another, Chazal say, Kalam Oimer Davar B'Shem Omrei Maybe Geula La'olam. Right? Whoever says something in the name of the person who said it, it's as if they brought redemption to the world. Many explanations for this. I was thinking maybe a chiddush, maybe a novel way of understanding this. It's just a suggestion. That l'cha'ira, what would prevent a person from saying something over in the name of the person who said it, is that maybe the person is not so osgehalten in every circle, and maybe you can quote the Satmar Rebbe for the Rav Kook people, and the Rav Kook people for most other people, and Lubavitch in this place and that place. And so that means that if we've gotten to a point in Yiddishkeit where we can actually share things in the name of who said them, maybe Geula. That's Geula La'olam. Right? That means that Baruch Hashem, people are free, and Kabul Emes Mimisha Amra Yidden are Yidden, and we can open up, and we must open up. So, like B'Shuschem, and I hope that this is not in any way Chas V'Shalom infringing on anybody's sensitivities or level of comfort. I'm going to share with you a teaching from Rav Kook, Zatzal, who might not be all of our Messiah and our tradition, and we might have very many feelings about who he was and what his legacy is, and that's not relevant now. That's completely not relevant. One thing is relevant is that he, like his Rosh Hashanah suggests, Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen, he goes by the word ra'aya, which means re'iyah, to see. He had a big, long vision that may not have yet even begun to unfold yet. Like we're well behind what he envisioned happening, both in Eretz Yisrael and for Yahadus, for Yiddishkeit in general. And he was so misunderstood in his generation, largely because he was speaking in a way that people weren't even capable of beginning to grasp the messages that he was giving over. And we're going to see that now in this teaching. So you have in front of you, or you should have, if you don't mind passing around the sources. We have over here also, there are sources there are sources here. And I want to read to you and read with you a teaching from Rav Kook. This teaching shows up in a section called Zer Onim, which means little drops, little seedlings. That's part of one of Rav Kook's primary works called what they'll call today orot, but which he certainly didn't call orot. He was a Litvish Yid. He probably said iris or eris. He didn't call them orot. What Rav Kook called iris, and this particular teaching, among all of Rav Kook's teachings, I think is the most encapsulative of the message that I hope to be able to share with you, that we can share together. And we can try to close all phones just to help us stay focused as much as possible. So this teaching is called neshamos shel Olam HaTohu, the souls of the world of Tohu. Tohu is bewilderment, the world of confusion. A bit of hakdama even before looking inside, and it's a lengthy piece. So and Rav Kook's writing is, it's incredibly hard to read unless the person has experience with it. Baruch Hashem, I've been blessed to have. So we're going to read it together, and it's very poetic and it's very highfalutin, fancy language. But just by way of hakdama first, in Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, there is a pair of concepts that are fundamental, which are Olam HaTohu and Olam HaTikun. There's what's called the world of Tohu, of bewilderment, and then there's the world of fixing, the world of rectification. Not getting into the whole thing now, it's obviously a very, huge topic and way beyond anything that I could explain or anything that I could understand. But on a very basic level, an early stage in the unfolding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing His presence from the point of infinity, from the point of Hashem, the Chvoid of Atzmai, down to this world, which is called the Olam HaSiyah, the physical realm, there was a stage which had like a catastrophe happen in that stage, which is basically called in Kabbalah or Chassidus Shviras HaKelim, means the brokenness of the vessels. And essentially what that means is, from our understanding, obviously there weren't ceramic vessels, there weren't anything physical, there were conceptual vessels, and even beyond conceptual, it's all Mishalim and Mishalim of Mishalim. But in whatever way this means, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created vessels to contain and transmit His godliness, His gedlichkeit, His divinity. And those vessels, for one reason or another, they were overwhelmed by light, it was too much, and they shattered, and they broke. That place is Olam HaTohu, where there's an incredible revelation of Hashem's presence, but it's mamish overwhelming to the point that it ends up causing shiur, it ends up causing brokenness. And then there's Olam HaTikun, which is associated with the Torah and the 6 days of, so to speak, the Shnei Alafim Tohu, the 2,000 years of Torah, which ultimately carry on into the 2,000 years of Mashiach, all the while that He hasn't come, which is where we're taking the remnants, so to speak, of Hashem's presence that could still be found in everything, and we're using the Torah to put this thing back together, to find Elokus in every food, that's the brachas that we make, and in every experience, and B'nadam L'Chaveiroi, B'nadam L'Atzmai, and Chanukah Neiros, and Shabbos candles, and all the different mitzvahs across the whole spectrum of the Jewish tradition, with all of the Yom Tovim and the mitzvahs saseh. Mitzvahs saseh is essentially finding those sparks that were embedded within lower levels of creation, that were remnants of what's called again the shvira, the brokenness of the vessels, and we're slowly but surely fixing things. Olam HaTohu, that's the place of bewilderment, and then Olam HaTikun. So now Rav Kook is going to talk to us about the neshamos of Olam HaTohu. What does this mean? So let's read it together again. It's difficult, especially for those who don't have a background, but we'll try, Be'ezras Hashem, to read and translate in an understandable way. V'siyata d'shmaya. Says Rav Kook, S'chusi Agun Aleinu, Ha'hadracha ha'regila shel toim v'yosher. The general mahalach of toim, v'yosher, wholesomeness, yashrus, b'shmiras hamidas ha'tovis v'chol das v'din, of every kind of shmiras hamidas, working on one's character traits, v'chol das v'din, and every kind of either political or religious or societal das and din, guidelines. Zehu inyan taluchas Olam HaTikun. This is called Olam HaTikun. This is where things flow the way that they ought to flow, in a framework where everything goes the way that it seems to be supposed to go. That's the energy of Olam HaTikun. V'chol ha'spartzos mizeh, everything that's exploding out of that framework, either to the side of sub-tikkun, right, which means things that are falling below the system where things are supposed to proceed in an orderly and therefore a productive way, vefkerus, and just total efkerus, ubein mitzad aliyas das, v'yisarus ruach elyon, or the rising above into great and lofty visions of what this world can be. All of this, Olam HaTohu, anything that sinks below or goes beyond the norm, so to speak, the quote-unquote system, the straight and narrow, this is the inyan of Olam HaTohu. This is the inyan of a light that's so great, as we're going to see, that the vessels of whatever kind are incapable of capturing it, incapable of holding it. But even within this realm of what's called Olam HaTohu, there's a distinction between how this energy unfolds. Either so what he calls to the right, which would be in a holy way, or to the left, as he's going to describe. This is a classic, Cookian word here. It's not a Hebrew word, of course. Ha'adealistim ha'gedolim, the great idealists. They're yearning for a brand new way of humanity to function, new political theories, brand new ideologies, all of this incredible visions that they have for how we can change the way that humans live. This is the nature of all the revolutions that took place in the 18th century, in the 17th century, and all the great isms of the modern world, communism, even hyper-nationalism, fascism, different ways of thinking about how humans could live, and everybody striving for something that isn't yet here. Mutzak va'adir kaza, a solid and an awesome seder, she'im ba'olam le'dugma v'yasayid, but like the world is not ready for it. It cannot function. Because all these ideas, communism and fascism, and all these ideas are great on paper, but the world is... Anything that you have that sort of pushes against this, that doesn't fit into that framework, of course, leads to terrible tragedy. All in the name of the good, but it's ein ba'olam dugma v'yasayid. Al kain hi maharsim esabanu l'fi midas ha'olam. So ultimately, it leads to terrible brokenness. Hama'ulim, now those whose neshamas are rooted in the world of Tohu, yoidim, who are mu'ulim, which are like the best version of those, yoidim gam livnais ha'olam haneres. In the end, they figure out how to fix the world that first they need to break, and then they sort of construct something better on its rubble, like the third Beis Hamikdash. What the Redemptive of the Kedushas Levi tells us, that the destruction of the first and second Batei Hamikdash were just sort of demolition for the sake of reconstructing something stronger, right? And that's Tohu, that's brokenness, and for the purpose of building something better, different. But those who aren't capable of this yet, that great light of idealism, of yearning for that which isn't yet here, has only touched just a little bit, but hasn't yet really sunk in. It ends up destroying the world, which also comes from an extremely holy place. But unfortunately, if it's not channeled appropriately, it can be destructive. And this is connection to Olam HaTohu in a lower manifestation. Now here Rav Kook comes out and says this incredible thing that all of us ought to take to heart. Neshamas de Tohu gevoyos hein min neshamas de tikkun. The souls of the Olam HaTohu are well higher and holier and more expansive and more illuminated than the souls of Tikkun. They come from a higher place. They come from a greater revelation of godliness. They come from an energy that's beyond the vessels of this worldliness. Gedolos hein ma'od. These souls are gedolos hein. They are incredibly strong and enormous. They're great souls. And they demand a lot from reality. What the kalim of the current society can't handle, and what their own kalim can't handle. They don't know what to do with it. But they have something inside of them that's overflowing. And they don't have the kelim. They don't have the vessels for it. Mamakshis in or gadol ma'ay. Their neshamas are seeking an incredibly great light. Kol mashu mugvol mukta v'nerach enim echalim l'sasei. And anything that's limited, constricted, small, is unable to hold it. And of course, Rav Kook, you have to understand it in the historical moment, was speaking pre-war when some of the isms that I mentioned before, we have this idealist, this idyllic vision of what pre-war Yiddishkeit looked like. It was a churban ayom v'noira. There, at least, except maybe in the Hasidic world, which is a bit better, but standard, every family, 1, 2, 3, 4 children. You see pictures of the Altaheim, the Shtetlach, you have the grandfather there with the long beard, and everybody else is, you wouldn't believe that these have anything to do with each other, children, grandchildren. Came out to every family. It was a churban. And the quote-unquote establishment, before Kesher Nafshi and Avi Fishoff and Twisted Parenting and Kips and the whole thing, their perspective was, Arois, have to make a huge gather and say okay, we lost that generation, and who is a dar shuffle adlama'oid, what's going on here, and we'll sort of just try to gather our strength and hold on with Yiddishkeit the way that Yiddishkeit ought to be continued with. But it's as if they were giving up on the dar. The early Zionists included, of course. That was our Cook's sugya, the Marad Shmaitza of that grappling with what is this? What do they really want? What's happening in their neshamas that's compelling them toward this vision? What is it, and how can we channel it to Kedusha? But he was a lone voice in a desert. They didn't understand him. They thought that he's being, he's doing chanifa to the. They couldn't begin to understand what today every single one of you understand, and hopefully anybody with half a brain understands. Avoisais ahava. And they wrote him letters. It's not covered at terms. A goyin atzum. Rav Kook was a genius. He wrote halacha brura on all of Shas, showing each and every Gemara is like the reverse in a way of the Beis Yosef, the Noisei Kel, the Rambam. The halacha psuka that's paskin on every single Gemara. This was a goyin oilam, a Talmud of Volozhin. And they felt that it's not covered at Torah when he's hanging out with these, the Pritzei Adar. People eating on Yom Kippur. He would leave shul to go and hang out in the moshavs, spend time with these people, interact with them, treat them with respect. And Rav Kook had this vision, because Rav Kook said, no, we're making a tremendous mistake. These are not smaller neshamas. These are the biggest neshamas that have ever come down into the Jewish nation. And the Heilige Gra writes this, if you look in his Pirush to Sifra Tznius, which he actually references over here, take a look inside. The Gra says clearly that before the coming of Mashiach, which is our generation, all the neshamas of Tohu are going to come down for their tikkun. All the greatest souls that are filled with a light that's beyond them, they're going to come down, and they're going to be the ones to lead change if they can be guided correctly, but not squashed. That's not our goal. Not to push them into the current framework, because then it'll be a chaval, and they'll never end up giving the world what they came to give the world. They're here to change the paradigm. They're not here to fit into the system. They're here to reformulate the system in such a way where it's in its most expansive and refined form. So the neshamos of Tohu. It's a process. Let's go back to Rav Kook. Hein yardu mima'alasan mereishis hanatiyah shel ha'avoya lihivaled. He says these souls come from the earliest root in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's vision for what the world ought to look like. Lihivaled, and they were born. And sometimes his sroimimu, they rise up, and if they're not given the proper kalim, kishal heves, like a flame, v'nidaku, and then they can go out, or they can be pushed down. She'ifasan abilti sofit lo tikale. Their yearning that's infinite. Lo tikala, it has no, it doesn't cease. Heinon mislabshis bekalim shainim, and they'll find all different kinds of vessels to express this. And Rav Kook's day again, it was all the isms, the socialism and Buddhism and all the different isms, and capitalism to some Zionism, communism, and so on. She'efes harbe yoser v'yoser me'amida. They're just overflowing. She'efes v'noifeles. They rise up. They yearn mitzat teva hanishamis, that they need more than what is, and then they fall because there's no framework for them yet. Meaning they're rising into a place where it's, maybe Rav Kook also was rooted in a way, in this place where he came into a system that had no kelim for him. He's the Marad Shmaitz of Olam HaTohu. He himself was for sure a neshama from that world of Olam HaTohu. There's no framework for it, so it's unable to reveal what it means to reveal. You could say the same about the Baal Shem Tov, you could say the same about Rabbi Nachman. But all the great tzaddikim that were misunderstood in their time, without whom we couldn't breathe today. We couldn't breathe without the Baal Shem. Right? No matter who you are, it's a Litvish, Hasidish, makes no difference. You cannot take a breath of Jewish air without the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. Yiddishkeit would be unimaginable without his message, without his teaching. The same for Rabbi Nachman in a less overt way. It's the same applies. You could say the same thing about all the tzaddikim, but I'm talking about those who were misunderstood, those that rose up with a she'ifa to change everything, but there was no kelim yet. You could say the same for the Ramchal. You could say the same in a certain way about the Gra in a certain way. But the Ramchal for sure. Rav Kook for sure. Rabbi Nachman for sure. The neshamos of Olam HaTohu, it's a different Torah, it's a different Gilui, something else. They feel trapped at any time that there's any kind of framework that's of the present paradigm. They feel stuck. They're sort of trapped in four given rules that don't seem, and that's the key word, that don't seem to allow them to expand in the way that their neshamas feel that they ought to expand. To rise up into a realm where where there's no limit. And you know what happens to these souls? They sink into tuga, into angst, biyush, into despair, which turns into charon, which turns into anger. And from amidst this pain, that's kips, right? It's kids in pain. From amidst this pain, that's a result of the tuga, the yush, the charon. That's a result of their neshamas that are yearning for something that we cannot yet give them. That turns into Rasha, Bezelda, and Beshiflus, Bekir, Betir, Behiris, Bechora. That turns into every kind of brokenness and lowliness and sin and wrath. But those key words, those two words, umitoich ketzef, and that's the big paradigm shift I think of Rav Avi and the whole Kesher Nafshi is that it's not sinfulness, it's not lowliness. Pain. But here Rav Kook is telling us, but where did the pain come from though? So we don't feel oftentimes as parents that we caused pain, and sometimes we have a hard time understanding. Sachakol, okay, so like what hurt them so? Okay, some of the kids we know what hurt them, in a chanami. But for others, some of whom I know, we're getting ready for Sukkot already. What's going on over here? Oh, it's raining. Okay.
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay. That's fine. It's fine. It's the Satan in a different form. Let's stay focused if we can. So it's mitoich katzef. We understand. So where the pain come from? It's because mitzad neshmasam, neshamas gevayos ma'od, gevayos ma'od, great souls. Now we go to the second paragraph here. Their bubbling vitality, their life inside of them, it doesn't silent, it doesn't still. And and it shows up in those who seem to be so brazen so as to reject everything that they were given. It's this energy that forces them to reject what is, not because they're trying to reject what is, but because they're yearning for something so much bigger, so much deeper, so much more futuristic. Harashayim Baalei HaPrincipim. He says those who aren't living in accordance with their potential, which of course is the definition of Russia, is not wicked. A terrible definition. If you look in the Gemara Bava Metzia, speaks about something called Rishei Zaysin. Rishei Zaysin. What does Rishei Zaysin mean? It means olives that haven't reached maturity, they haven't reached their potential. So Rishus doesn't mean wickedness. It means that it hasn't yet manifested what it's supposed to be. So he says, quote unquote, Risha'im, meaning people that aren't yet fully manifest. Bali have principim, who have these principles, have poishim l'hachas v'loy l'te'avan, and sometimes even when you have poishim l'hachas, even people that they know it's Yom Kippur and they're eating because it's Yom Kippur, not the te'avan because they can't bother fasting. Dafka, says Rav Kook, you know what kind of holy energy that comes from? It's a crazy thing that his generation couldn't understand him. He was a koifer, he was rejected, pashkil vilim, things thrown at him, terrible destruction. Because he was speaking a language that they didn't have the kelim yet. We now are slowly constructing the kelim. Hashem is forcing us to construct the kelim to hear this. That sometimes a chayte lehaches could be even holier than a chayte lete'avin, even though in halacha and everything else it's the opposite. Because what is it that's compelling this kid, right, to such degrees of rejection? Ad kedei kach. Says Rav Kook, it's rejection of this because there's a deep yearning for that, which is let's say the Beis HaMikdash Hashlishi, the Yerushalayim Shel Mala, which we're going to learn about from Rabbi Nachman if we have the time. Bezras Hashem in a few minutes. Nishmasam gevaya ma'oid. Their souls are incredibly lofty. Me'oiris de tayu. They come from the light of tayu. I hope that you haven't heard this before. I wonder whether you have. Yeah, have you anybody learned this with you yet? No? Okay, I know that you guys know everything already, so it's like, okay, so we're just sharing this. Bachru beheres vehina maharsen. They've chosen to destroy, and they intend to destroy. Ha'olam mitashtashes al yadam, and the world oftentimes, as the process unfolds, can seem to be weakened by them. And vehein imai, and they themselves can also struggle as a result. But the essence of that energy that fills their spirit of rejection, their spirit of rebellion, their spirit of being boed, of kicking everything that's been gifted to them, is a point of kedusha. It's a point of holiness. That when these neshamos that have an akudas kodesh of the Olam HaTohu, which is an incredibly lofty realm, it's a place of gilui elikus ne'ira'ava atzuma ad lama'od, when they come into contact with holy souls that are aligned with their mahalich, that get them, that respect them, that value them, not despite but specifically because of the behavior that they're exhibiting, which is an indicator as to their nekudas kodesh. When they come into contact with Rabbeim and Moira Hayra and Rabbanim and parents, which all of us are turning ourselves into, we're parenting ourselves, and it's a huge privilege, kiviyachol, that Hashem has gifted us to be able to be Geula people. So Hashem is forcing us into that now. Because the Galus ideas, it's not shaykh anymore for this new experience. When neshamas like that come into contact with neshamas like those, they are filled with confidence, clarity, and an idealism that won't destroy but will build. It will build. It will build. Rav Kook was one of those neshamas. And so when all these chevra came into contact with him, he spoke their language. He understood what they wanted. He didn't write them off. And so they felt there's a place for me. Here's someone who understands. Same thing for Rabbi Nachman, who was largely, Rav Kook once stood up and he announced in public. He announced in Yiddish, which I assume most of us know, he said, Ich bin Rabbi Nachman, Rav Kook. He said, I am Rabbi Nachman. Because Rabbi Nachman of Breslov lived about 100 years before Rav Kook. I have a sefer at home called Shnei Ma'aris HaGedolim, which is all about the relationship between Rav Kook and Rabbi Nachman. The Breslovers in Tveria, if anybody knows the history, Rav Avrabin, Rav Nachman, Rav Shmuel Horowitz, those Breslovers said he used to go to Rav Kook for Shalosh Shudas. They said the Arav Rabbeinu is by him. The Arav Rabbi Nachman is by him. The Arav judging favorably is by him, which was ubiquitous in all the Hasidus, but he had the courage to apply it. Where everybody else had it nice and svarim and for Vedlach by Shalosh Shudas, but to actually start to look at the world that way. What's that?
Rav Kook nowadays, isn't there?
Yes, there is. What's that again?
Rav Kook nowadays in Tiberi is the same type of person.
Rav Dov Cook. I don't know that there's a relation actually.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, Rav Dov Cook is also in Ish Pnimi, But Rabbi Nachman had the same mahalach. He would sit with the maskilim, whose center was in Uman, and he wouldn't talk to them Torah. He would play chess with them. He would hang out with them. He would just have relationships with them. He would talk biology and philosophy, and he was well versed in the 7 wisdoms. He was a genius of epic proportion. Rabbi Nachman, he would sit and play chess with them, befriend them. And guess what happened at the last Rosh Hashanah? Somebody who was called Hirsch Der, who, believe it or not, we actually have a picture of, because he ended up becoming a professor in Cambridge, if I'm not mistaken. You can Google this. This is you can see what a person looked like who met Rabbi Nachman, who knew Rabbi Nachman. Obviously, there's no picture of Rabbi Nachman or Rabbi Nosson or anybody from that part of Europe. He had started to grow a beard, and he davened in the Breslover kibbutz. This was the chief maskil, the head. Heretic, the Enlightenment ones, the first ones that started to pave the way for Klal Yisrael to give up the old and to embrace quote unquote the new, which isn't the new, but it was just the step in between the Taka old and then the new, which is mamish going to be the integration of the best of the old with the best of the new. And he mamish davened with the kibbutz of the Breslovers, and then the Rabbi Nachman's Levaya, which took place shortly afterwards because he was nifter on the 4th day of Sukkot in 1810. Rabbi Nosson, if anybody knows the history of Nosson, was like the moon to the son of Rabbi Nachman. He was like the Rav Chaim Vital to the Arizal, the Yeshua to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Maggid Mizrich, or there are others also to the Baal Shem. And he was crying. And it's brought down in the Tarish Baal Peh, so to speak, of Breslov. It was recorded in various Sfarim that this maskil, this first bearer, was sobbing uncontrollably. And at some point he turned to Rav Nosson and he said, you think you lost the Rebbe? He's talking about the maskilim, we lost our Rebbe, the only person that could bring us back to Hashem. What did he do? He taught them, he lectured to them, gave them musar, klum. He saw them for who they were. Neshamos tiktoyu, who might be in a state of destruction and destroying, but will ultimately be a part of paving if we can channel their energy, respect them, and treat them with I know it sounds crazy, with the respect that's due to them, not because of their behavior, on the contrary, because of what their behavior is indicating, that we can build the new paradigm. Dafka with these. When they come into contact with us, such a neshama, noisenes lam ois hachayim, b'yoyser he meskalis ve'eza achris yamin. Says Rav Kook, these neshamas will be revealed at the end of time. But Tkufa shalufnei heres olam, in the Tkufa, before the complete destruction of the world, and I don't think he means like nuclear explosion, Armageddon, but I think he's talking about what's happening now, which we would call in modern parlance, we would call it postmodernism. Right? It means the destruction of all the old paradigms. Everything is being questioned today. Everyone has their own narrative, their own, and everything is being questioned. It's the destruction of society. Men are girls, boys are girls. Everything. It's all the distinctions are being blurred. Says Rav Kook, this is the time of a hiskalos, of a revelation of the Olam HaTohu, of that world. Just like I said, the Gra writes. Rav Kook was a mamshech derech of both the Gra and the Baal HaTanya. His father's side, he was mamshech from the Talmidei Gra. From his mother's side, he was he goes back to the Baal HaTanya. And so he was a blend of these two, a synthesis of these two. They will come back to the world at that time. Because this revelation of these souls marks the threshold between Galus and Gula. It marks that period of time where we have to let go of the old, because behechrich, we're moving into the Aleph Hashvi. We're literally on the threshold. This is the birth pangs of Gula. These neshamas need to come down now, and it's not despite them that Yiddishkeit is going to move forward. It is specifically through them. Both directly, Be'ezus Hashem, for all of you and for all of us, and indirectly in the sense of how much they're helping us evolve as parents in our perspective, in our conception of what Hashem is, what His love means, right? Which is all Geula oriented. It's forcing us into bigger ways of thinking, ways of grappling with life that we never would have been privy to had all of our kids been neshamas of tikkun, right? So they come down dafka before the end of time because we're about to build a new world. They come down on the threshold of the time period of hisrachavos hagavulim, when all the boundaries are expanded. B'terem leidas chayk shemima'al lechukim. B'terem leidas chayk, before the birth of a chayk, of a framework, shemima'al lechukim, which is beyond all of our current frameworks. And that's why before the redemption, there's a tremendous chutzpah in the world. And there's a terrible storm that will begin, that will grow, and it will grow in its ferocity, and it won't be calm. There will be waves after waves of those who break all boundaries. Chutzpah bi chutzpah tigadal. And chutzpah, as Chazal tell us it will before Mashiach's coming, will grow without being satisfied with any expression of goodness that shows up still in a way that's too limited for the light of the Geula Mipnei, she'inena memalas kol ha'mashalos kulam, because it doesn't yet satisfy every yearning. Mipnei she'inena misalek es kol ha'masachas me'al kol pnei ha'loit, because it does not yet strip away all the concealments, all the masks that make up the veil that's hiding Hashem's presence. She'inena megalas kol ha'razim, that isn't yet ready to reveal all the secrets. Ve'inena masbias kol ha'ma'avayim, that doesn't yet satisfy all the yearning. Rav Kook is very poetic, sometimes difficult to, but hopefully we have the privilege of presenting it in an understandable way. So by etas hein bakol, they rebel against everything. B'chelik ha'toiv, because they don't just want a portion of toiv, they want all of the toiv, and we don't yet have the language with which to communicate that. Bigarine ha'oisha, they throw out sort of the baby with the bathwater. Bigarine ha'oisha ha'moyev la'lamenucham ha'shalom ha'olam nis. And in so doing, they throw out those garine, those seeds of happiness. Hamoivil, that lead el hamenucha to yishav hadas, the peace of mind, v'shalom olamis, and world peace. Hamoivil al ad me'ad, which bring to endless pleasure, al roimamos nitzche nitzachim, to the roimamos, to the elevation of eternity. By etes v'zay efes. They're rebelling, they're angry, they're broken and they break. Yoredes lirais b'stei zarim, and they descend to go and shepherd in foreign fields. Mashkifas b'yaldei nechar, and they look upon the yaldei nechar, upon the so to speak the non-Jewish children. Michaleles Ga'on is quoting Psukim from Yeshayahu. Michaleles Ga'on kol tzvidei nachas. They defile all glorious beauty. Ve'ein nachas. Now, nachas on a certain level, in context here, means that they don't have nachas, meaning they don't have peace. None of these kids have peace, right? No matter how much they think that they're gonna get when they break beyond all the boundaries, nachas they don't have. And ve'ein nachas is also sometimes parents could think that from these children there's no nachas. And here Cook concludes. These neshamas are demonstrating in all this counterintuitive way es koichan, their strength, that not any shemet of limitation and lowliness and smallness is not able to la'atzav cannot contain them. And the weak ones, of the neshamas, of the olam of tikkun, which I don't believe any of us are, by the way, in this dar, but certainly in this room. I think each and every one of us is a neshama of Olam HaTohu in one way or another. I believe that our whole dar is, and maybe even all the neshamas of all the people that are in this dar. It's a revelation of the Olam HaTohu. But when there are anoshim that are still connected to the Olam HaTikkun, Bali shiur v'animos, those people who are just sort of well-mannered and can live within a framework, misbal l'misesa, they can't handle these neshamas. The schools can't handle these neshamas. The rabbanim can't handle these neshamas. The framework can't handle them. And he quotes here Pasi Yeshayahu, Mi yager lanu eish eichla. How can live in my house a consuming fire? We have no kli for it. Hayos said it's a big lie, but mi yager lanu eish eichla, it's going to destroy everything. Mi yager lanu moktei olam. How can the torches of the world? We don't have place for them. Listen to this line. If you don't take anything else, just this line. Aval be'emes loy haya pachad. But the truth is, and Rav Kook was speaking from the standpoint of emes la'amito, like the truest truth, from the standpoint of the grand process of the unfolding of Jewish history in the context of world history, in the context of cosmological history, in the context of all being, from the standpoint of the true truth, lo yaya pachad. There's no reason for fear. Rak choitim bali nefashis chalushis v'chanevim. These weaker souls are mistaken. Hein pachadim v'ra adam achazasam. They can't handle it, and it's not for the faint of heart, which by now none of us, we're giboy leiv. We can't be faint of heart and be a parent of one of these children. Not now. For the faint of heart, they can't handle it. It may even be a sister, it may even be an aunt, it may even be some well-meaning family member that asks, is this really the mahalach? I mean, can you really keep him in the house? Can you really? Neshamos maybe of Olam HaTohu, I don't know. But chaloshes, they're weak. They can't understand. They can't begin to grasp this mahalach. But courageous souls know that the revelation of this energy are one of the revelations of energy that are necessary for the completion of the world. That are necessary, adarabah, to strengthen Yiddishkeit, not to take away from Yiddishkeit. These will be, be'ezus Hashem, you'll see, be'ezus Hashem, in your lifetime, how these children will become the leaders if they get exposed to this kind of geula messaging. If not, then there will be no one to give them strength. That means to say that each and every one of you need to be connected to this kind of teaching, to these kinds of tzaddikim that I mentioned, who are olam the tohu tzaddikim, the Hashem, Rabbi Nachman, Ramchal in a certain way, Rav Kook. They knew what these neshamas needed to hear, that no one else in Yiddishkeit was able to handle them. Kimat. When they come into contact with neshamas like these, that can guide them, get them, that respect them, that understand what it is inside of them that's pushing them into these ways of acting and speaking and thinking. It's litzoyrich imutz koichoser shala uma. This is to the benefit, going to benefit the entire nation. Ha'adam, all of humanity, v'ha'olam, and the whole world. It's just that we're in labor, and the world is in labor. And so, when these neshamas are revealed in this in-between time, which we are, mamish in between, it's after Chatzos on Erev Shabbos of the Shabbos HaGadol Shel Gedolim, right? Meaning to say right now we are it's like halfway through the Elef HaShishi, right? Which is mamish Erev Shabbos of the Erev Shabbos right before the Gilui of Mashiach. So right now is this, and it started already from the time of the Baal Shem. The aura of the Geula started to shine. So that Mashiach told the Baal Shem HaKadosh, when he met Mashiach, whatever this means, in a state of Aliyas Neshama, on that last Rosh Hashanah of his life, as he wrote in a letter to his brother-in-law of Gershon of Kitta, that he asked Mashiach, Masai Ka'asimar, when are you coming? What did Mashiach answer him? When your well springs spread. That means to say that already from the time of the Baal Shem, the aura of the Geula was shining, but the aura of the Geula, which is heralding in a new era, requires the shedding of the old. Not to say that this is better, this is worse, but it's not shaykh anymore. That's Galus Yiddishkeit, it's good for the shtetl, and now the shtetl walls have fallen down. And we have to be mityaches to that metzias, otherwise our children are not going to know what to do. We're keeping them within walls, but there are no walls. And today every kid has a phone in his pocket. And today everyone has access to all of human knowledge from beginning of time to the end of time. If we don't have a theory of this, if we can't give over to our children the place of Am Yisrael now within the Ummah Sa'olam, and how we are intended to be a Mamlechas Koyhana B'Goy Kadosh, as you'll see in the Sefarno, if you take a look at Shemais Perak Yates Pasuk Vav, On that pasuk where the Sepharno says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol min ha'enoshi yakar be'inav, that the whole human race is precious to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is not like radical, liberal terminology. This is in your Mekrais Gedolos, the mainstream of Fayrish. Okay, he was Italian, it's true. And the Italians were always, a bit broader. But the Sepharno says very clearly, he says, what does it mean to be Mamlechas Kohanim? It means that our nation is not meant to sequester ourselves and cloister ourselves away from the world. We are the priests of the world. He says the same way that Kohanim are in our nation to the Yisraelim, that's what the whole Umas, the whole nation of Am Yisrael is vis-a-vis the Umas Ha'olam. According to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, another Geula neshama that nobody understood, he felt that Jewish history had so fundamentally turned a corner after the Holocaust that now he felt was the time for us to actively begin to teach non-Jews. Sheva mitzvahs b'neinayach. There's what to teach them. There's what to teach them. Okay, it was a das yachid. Again, so was Rav Kook, but he was right. So was Rabbi Nachman, but he was right. So was the Baal Shem, but he was right. They were channeling a different light that today we look back and we say, obviously, but it wasn't obvious then. According to the Shvala Zayda, who was the primary detractor, the misnagid of Rabbi Nachman, he once, the story goes that he sent one of his students to tell a student of Rabbi Nachman to communicate the message to Rabbi Nachman that the Shvala Zayda says that Rabbi Nachman is very holy, but he came to the world 200 years too early. This is what the Shvala Zayda wanted to communicate to Rabbi Nachman. Okay, the Shmuah continues that Rabbi Nachman sent back that if they're calling him Zayda, it's because he came to the world 200 years too late, let's say. Okay, I don't know if that's actually true, the Shvala Zayda stuff, unbelievably holy and whatever, it's maybe a joke, I don't know. But ultimately this is for sure true that Rabbi Nachman was way ahead of his time. No one could understand the man. He said that explicitly. He says in Sichas Ran in a number of places, he says, I'm letting you know that there are Torahs that I'm telling you that will do nothing for you, but they'll be meskalgal from you to the next dar, to the next dar, to the next dar. He said what Moshe Rabbeinu said, Lahavdil, at the end of the Torah, he said that the Torah that's being given to you is La'asher Yeshnu Payayim, for those who are in this dar, V'la'asher Einena Payayim. Rabbi Nachman said that about his teachings, which means to say that he understood himself that he's way ahead. So was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but now, slowly but surely, we can give our children the broadest kind of Yiddishkeit that in Golus wasn't even conceivable to begin to talk about. The Umas Ha'olam wouldn't let you get one word out of your mouth about the Sheva Mitzvahs anything, because you'd be dead if you tried to open your mouth, in their presence. But today, it's a different world. Today, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us technology. Technology is a double-edged sword, like every tool in the world. And the more Golus-oriented Chevra are going to reject it wholesale and say that it's impossible to use this for Kedusha. And those who have the courage to look forward are going to recognize that maybe today we have an opportunity to do that which was never possible in human history, which is for one person at one place and one time to reach every human in every place and at every time. Now, our neshamos to tell you, Nix, are yearning for this message. Any message that isn't able to integrate the reality of our world with every revolution that's unfolding before our eyes in the secular realm, in the religious realm, if we don't give them a theory of it, including every aspect of it, including artificial intelligence, including psychedelics, by the way, if anybody's aware of what's going on in that realm, if we don't have a language to speak about this, and we pretend like none of this is happening, and we continue to put things under the rug, it's not nearly enough for what the neshamos are yearning to see, because they're rooted not in the past but in the future. And putting things under the rug is the ghetto mentality, because we, essentially the Jews, were put under the rug. It was called the ghetto. And so Memela, when we were put in the ghetto, so we had this mentality that anything important needs to be put under the rug, just like we were. We it's called in psychology, what's it called when you onboard, we internalized, right? We mirrored what was being told to us. Today, something new is happening in Am Yisrael. If we continue to educate and parent like they did 500 years ago, we're going to ruin the next generation and lose them for good. And, Memela, we're going to be holding back the Geula. And this is so crucial because sometimes, why do we continue to teach in that way and maybe parent in that way and think in that way is because this is our Messiah. We got to hold on to it because this is all we have. But we forget that maybe the foundation of the Messiah is the visions of the Nevi'im, who spoke about a Torah Chadasha Mi'iti Teitze, who spoke about Ar Chadash Al Tzion Tahir, which we say every morning that there's a new light that needs to shine. But we go with the Mahalach, still from the times of the Chassam Sofer, like Chadash Aser Min HaTorah. So we might aser also the Ar Chadash Al Tzion Tahir, because if everything Chadash is aser, then how could we move? How could we move forward? So it's time for a new Ruach. What precisely is the Ruach? We're not there. I don't know. We need Nevi'im. We're not quite there yet. And that's why the time that we're in is so murky. And that's why it's so difficult to navigate. And that's why there's so much confusion in this dar. Because the world is in labor. And these neshamas that are porei together are filled with the light of Geula to such a degree that they just don't know what to do with it, and we don't know what to do with them. But one thing that they ought to know, and one thing that we ought to remember and remind ourselves again and again and again, is that Eiz is a chut, what a privilege we have to be parents of neshamas tetoyu, of souls that are rooted in a gilei elikus from the future. And then, so to speak, help ourselves connect with these futuristic tzaddikim, which we're going to learn about just in a minute. We have another few minutes. I'm sorry for keeping you so long, but I just feel like it's a very, very important teaching. Is it? Oh, I know we started late. Is it okay to go a bit over time? Whoever has to leave will leave. But it's recorded, so just to finish, to connect to these tzaddikim, so we know the language of pneumius. We know the language of pneumius hafer, which is what these neshamas are yearning for. They've been go'onim and nigla in previous Gilgulim. Rav Chaim Vital writes this. There will be neshamas that come down to this world who have no interest in Gemara and Halacha because they've already learned Shas and Poskim. They're doresh. Rav Chaim Vital writes this explicitly. They're doresh, that chelik of Torah that they never learned in Galus. They're yearning for a Torah of Sod. Now, we can't take every kid and teach them Kabbalah now. But what we can do is begin to alter our language about Hashem, and about Torah and mitzvahs, and about Shabbos, and about Yiddishkeit, so that it shines with a light of such inwardness and such isolation from any institutional element or cultural element, so that it's just Yiddishkeit as Yiddishkeit, and not the culture of it. They don't want the culture of it, but the essence of what it means to be a Jew, mamish, for real. That's what they want. And when they get everything that's the opposite of that, so they reject it out of hand. Yes, can we finish and hold the question until we just see the end of it? Okay, so let's finish this piece from Cook, but hold on to the question if you can. Maybe it'll get weaker, maybe it'll get stronger. Okay? First, these neshamas, it shows up in a terrible way. But eventually, the way that I read this, it will be taken from their experience of immaturity, and be'ezras Hashem in their own lives, they'll come into contact with neshamas who know how to guide them, who know how to see them for who they are, and they will, and it will be given to a righteous revelation. Giborim ka'aroyos. There will be like warriors, like lions. That will reveal the greatest tikkun, which is the Bechin of Yaakov Avinu. Without getting into this is Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Without getting into the whole thing now. Yitzchak it's really the Olam HaTohu. Yitzchak is Kates Chai. Yitzchak is terrible heroes, which leads to the ultimate tikkun of Yaakov Avinu. There's much more to say about that. At this minute, we're just sharing Rav Cook's idea. That's where it's rooted. That's really where it's rooted. First Beis HaMikdash, second Beis HaMikdash, third Beis HaMikdash. But oiz ruach shall seichel tzalul va'ametz, and it will be guided by a seichel tzalul, by a clear way of thinking. Uba'ametz nefesh shal hargasha v'izgalus ma'asit kvu'a ubrura, and it will be revealed with the spiritual courage and emotion that will be revealed in a way of seder. not in the way that it currently looks, but in a new Seder, which will ultimately reveal that which we ought to be committed to, because I'm not committed to the culture of Orthodox Judaism. It's a made-up construct. I'm not committed to yeshivish. I'm not committed to any part of the culture. I'm committed to Yiddishkeit. So I don't mind if it's leivish tzura upaishet tzura. Kol zman that the revelation of the emes of Torah is revealing itself. That's what I'm committed to. That's it. That's what I identify with. People ask me all the time, what are you? Just a Yid. I hope, I daven, I dream. Listen to these last words from Rav Kook. Hasufais halalu, these storms, yechaylu gishmei nedava. Will the Ezra Hashem bring rain of blessing. Ar pile choshech elu, these clouds of darkness, yemachshire oyrim gedolim, are the forerunners for an incredible revelation of light. And here he quotes Yeshayahu, Umei oifel, umei choshech ene ivrim terena. And it's from the darkness, and it's from this cloud that the eyes of the blind will be enlightened and will be able to see. We'll be able to see. With the last few minutes, and then we'll do questions. I want to walk you through, and I'm going to read this much more quickly. Rabbi Nachman, and this is really it's fundamental. If you have to leave, please go. I don't mind just even sitting. If they'll have me, I'll speak to the camera, and then we can send out the recording. But I think this is important to say. And based on what we just learned, I think we can understand this deeper. And you have to open your heart to this, like nothing you ever opened your heart to before. This is Torah Lamed Gimel and Likutei Moharan. This is the 33rd lesson from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Nachman Tzchusi Abin. Tell me this isn't nevuah, quasi-nevuah. Like this is, he had a, the Satmar Rebbe said about Rabbi Nachman that with the Chozim Lublin, the seer of Lublin was able to see in Makan, Rabbi Nachman was able to see in time. That's what the Satmar Rebbe said. Right, the Satmar Rebbe we're all okay with. Right, the Heilige Satmar Rebbe said that what the Chozim was able to see in Makan, he saw from one end of the world to the other. Rabbi Nachman had the same ability to see until the end of time. And that's who he was teaching, me and you. See, he says, there are two aspects to Torah. We spoke about how do we come to Har Sinai. We come to Shavuos with children who seem to be rejecting Torah. Listen to this. Torah has two aspects. Bechinas nigla, bechinas nister. There's the aspect of nigla satira, of the revealed level of the Torah, of the do's and don'ts, of the eitz hadas toivara, and the aspect of what's good and what's not good, and what's kosher and pasul and tamei and Torah mutar and asur, all of which, by the way, relate to the 6 days of the week, and the Shishi Siddur Mishnah. That's what our 6 of those pairs, kosher, pasul, tamei, Torah mutar, asur. That's the Indian of Gullus, in a sense. And Ubechinas Nister, and there's an aspect of the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life, Shabbos Kodesh, Ku'ula. There's the aspect of the Torah of La'asid Lavai. V'hanister hazeh, he says, this hidden Torah, hu oiraisa da'atika stima'a, this is called the ancient hidden Torah da'asidul is Galil La'asid Lavai, which will be revealed La'asid Lavai, based on the pasuk in Yeshayahu that says Torah mi'iti teitzei, and Chazal Darshan, Torah chadasha mi'iti teitzei. There will be a new Torah that comes forth from Hashem. Whoa, I mean that's a shocking statement. That's one of the 13 principles of faith from the Rambam. There won't be a new Torah, but the Medrash tells us, based on this pasuk, there will be a new Torah. So what does it mean? A new Gilui, a brand new revelation, underlying all of what we currently have. It's not going to be a new Torah, it'll be a deeper Torah. But and at that point, because when this ancient hidden Torah is revealed anew, there will be incredible peace in the world. As the pasuk in Sheol says, where the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard with the goat. There won't be any more tayu, there won't be any more destruction on my holy mountain. Because the whole earth will be filled with the consciousness of the divine. Because at that point will be revealed what Rabbi Nachman calls ahava shebedas, love of the mind. What does this mean, love of the mind? As opposed to what? Says the Rebbe, Ki yesh shnei minei ahavos. And you already know this because you already lived this, but now I'm just giving you some words to put this to, okay? Ki yesh shnei minei ahavos. There are two kinds of love. Achas, one kind of love, is called shi'ava shebiyamim. That's called love that's expressed in days. Now, he already explained earlier on in the lesson, it's a very long and glorious lesson, like all of Rabbi Nachman's tapestries. You can't just take one part of it, really it's a whole epic drama. But what Rabbi Nachman is saying over here is that earlier on he described how all the days of the week are limited midos of Hashem. So Hashem has 6 fundamental midos. They're expressed in the 6 days of the week. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chayed, and Yisod. They're getting into the depth of it. That's each day of the week. So the days of the week are mugbal. They're limited. And that's the love of days. There's a chesed, there's a love, that's in days. And he quotes from the Zohar Kodesh, there's an aspect of love that's revealed in Kalim, in Tikkun. And there's a revealed aspect of the way that Hashem loves Am Yisrael in a limited way, in a way of boundaries. But v'yesh ahava shehu b'koyach. Says this incredible thing. There is a love of Hashem that is in potentia. It's in potential. Ainu, which means ha'ahava shahaya bein Yisrael aviyam shabashamayim koyidem abriya. The love that Hashem had for Am Yisrael before He created them. When there was no Am Yisrael to love. He's going to explain what he means in a minute. When Am Yisrael were still in His divine mind, kiviyachol. Lemashol, and here's the parable. Yesh ahava sha'av oyev es benoi shekol adam yachol hasik zois ahava. There is a love that a parent, a mother, a father loves their child, that every person, every sister, he said, and every aunt and uncle and cousin, everyone can understand the love that a parent has for a child who's from the Olam of Tikkun. Everyone can understand. The kid is giving nachas, the kid comes home from school and he knows his Gemara, and the kid is hanging out with good friends, and the kid is excited about the holy things. That's Ava Shabbayamim. Everybody could understand that love. But the love that the mother and the father have for the child before the child is born means before the child gave you any nachas, before you even saw them, you saw what they looked like. But there's already love there before they needed to earn it. There's already love that's essential. It's because they're part of you. It's because you're part of them. This bond and this love, we don't have kalim for now to be able to articulate this bond that has nothing to do with earning or not earning, that has nothing to do with deserving or not deserving, because they haven't been born yet. They couldn't have done anything to earn your love. It's unconditional. That love is beyond kalim, beyond midas. In the time of Tikkun, in the time of the 6 days of the week, we can only understand things sort of in kalim. But it's an infinite love that's unconditional. It has nothing to do with vessels of any kind. It has nothing to do with containers. It's just essential. And it can't even manifest in any identifiable lavush. But here we come to the end. Which is our time. Mamish, we're living now in Mamish ikvasa de ikvasa de Mashiach, and it can even say well into the Aschalta de Gula. Which we don't have to use, Rav Kook's neo-Zionist expression of that, which is completely misunderstood anyway. Rav Kook was the biggest critic of Zionism. Anyway, but without people just don't know the history. But aside from that, leaving that aside, the word Aschalta de Gula is used way earlier. If you look at the Malbim to Yeshayahu, the Malbim tells us that from the minute the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, it was Aschalta de Gula. The minute that we went into Galus, the energy of Geula bringing us back was already shining in the world. So it's not it's not a Rav Kook idea, it's not a Rabbi Nachman idea. It's way earlier, right? Even though the Malbim was around the same time, but it's not from that camp per se. But in that time, and we don't know exactly what this means yet, but there's going to be a gilui of a new Torah, of a new way of approaching Yiddishkeit. And at that time, the Maimer Chachamenu Zal, the Gemara in Tainus tells us, Asidim tzadikim leiraz be'etzba, where the tzadikim will be able to point in their finger, Zeh Hashem kivinu loi, where they can literally encounter the divine in a way that we can't even imagine. Where it's not just about, okay, you do this, you do that, there's this yamte, this mitzvah. It's mamish, we're swimming in elikus, and that's going to be revealed to everybody, and that's found, that awareness of life is found, of course, in the doctrine of Nister, of Nister, of the Zohar Kodesh, and its derivatives through all the different camps, the Rashash, the Ramchal, and the Ari, and the Ramak, and everybody, which all speak about the immanence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't somewhere up there, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is literally, in the words of the Zohar Kodesh, Les Asar Panim Minei. There's no place that's vacant of Hashem. There's no experience that's vacant of Hashem. Hashem is here, not there. Hashem is, to quote Uncle Maishi, who was quoting, of course, the Balatanya, truly everywhere. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take off all the garments, all the concealments. And the whole world will be flooded with the knowledge of Hashem like water covers the ocean bed. And at that time is going to be revealed to all of Am Yisrael the love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for us. That's an aspect of unconditional love. And that's the love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is forcing each and every one of you to reveal to your children, because that's the Gilui of La'asid Lavai. That is the way that Hashem is revealing Himself in that midah, what's called atik, which is called keser, without getting to that now, which is rachamim gemurim, that becomes revealed daika in malchus, that becomes revealed dafka at the end of time, beside eshes chayil, which is at the bottom, that becomes ateres bala, that reflects the rachamim rabim, the rachamim gemurim, the aspect of oitzer matnaschinam, that you don't need to deserve it. You already are loved. You already are okay. You already are a gilui. But you see what Hashem is doing now, before the end of time? He's giving us neshamas that are from the world of Tayu, that can't handle any limitation, forcing us to express toward them, to help them, a love that's from that place of Tayu, that's from that place beyond Midas. And then when that happens, that love of before creation, that essential love, that love that has nothing to do with earning or deserving, that love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loved Am Yisrael before they even did any mitzvah. They weren't even born yet. Shehi Pnimius HaTorah, which is the light of Kabbalah, which is the light of Rashbi, which is why this is happening now more and more and more. Everybody's interested now in Pnimius. This is what people need. This is what people need. We're done with the language of Galus. We need a new thing, a new language, a new art. And that's revealed. So we're not just sufficing with the Gemara and what it's telling us. We want the godliness within the Gemara. We want HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we want all aspects of Yiddishkeit as means to that end, but not the end in and of itself. Because now it says it's still concealed. And when that's revealed, says Rabbi Nachman, then we're going to skip because it's running late and we'll finish. He says it's an aspect of total peace, total compassion, which he says in another place, understanding everyone's journey, where we can all get along, and this one doesn't threaten me and I'm not threatening them. We're all journeying together. And this is the hidden light, he says, the hidden Torah, Pnimius HaTorah. He brings psukim to prove this. And then finally, and here we finish, Rabbi Nachman says, there are also hidden tzaddikim. And that's exactly what we've been speaking about the whole time, from Rav Kook, and from the Ramchal, and from Rabbeinu HaKadosh Rabbi Nachman, from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, from all these marginalized tzaddikim that weren't mainstream, but that had the futuristic vision. They weren't mainstream for that time, because the mainstream didn't have kalim for them, but they were speaking the language of our children. So now it's not a choice of what's your Messiah or not your Messiah. It's oxygen for your children. It has nothing to do with Messiah now. It has to do with this is what they need. This is what they need. Says Rabbi Nachman, there are tzaddikim shein tzvunim umustarim. That the world doesn't have kalim yet for them. They're tzaddikim who have a message beyond kalim for people who are beyond kalim. They're tzaddikim who are revealing the Torah from the Olam HaTohu, which is relating to the neshamos of the Olam HaTohu with a message from the Olam HaTohu. Tzaddik nikra toiv, tzaddik nikra ar, just like the Torah is called Torah and ar. And here we come to, this is the end. Which is exactly what's going on in our dar. You have to know where to look. Maybe importantly, you have to know where not to look, fortunately. When the hidden tzaddikim and their Torah is being revealed to the world, and their Torah HaTzfun is being revealed to the world, there will be an incredible peace. It doesn't just mean like peace, it means shlemus. An incredible, the whole picture will be revealed. Where all opposites will find their place in a grander narrative. Am Yisrael with the Umas Ha'olam. Each member of Am Yisrael with their shevet and with their thing. And this one is a Marid Tzedakah, and this one likes learning, and this one likes singing, and this one knows how to do Masamata Be'emuna. And we don't have a hierarchy. We understand that each and every tiny little mosaic square is necessary to come together with all others to form the visage of the king, to use the mashal of the Mea Shilach, which is a geula message which is not being given over, as you know, in our schools, where it's just one way for everybody, and anybody that doesn't meet this crazy high bar is b'diavad chas v'chalila, chas v'shalom, which is a gullus mentality ultimately, because that's not shalom, that's not the garza evim keves, that's not where everybody has a place and we all get together to be megala, something that's greater than any of us can ever do individually. When that's revealed, then az yiskala avashavadas. Then will be the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, which is a day that's beyond any days or nights. It's beyond our current constructs of day or night or good or bad. It's beyond. It just is, which is a gilui of that place that's beyond time and space. It's a gilui of Elokus as Elokus. Well, there's no past, present, future. There's no bad or good. It's just Bayom Ahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmai Echad. And that's really, from my humble understanding, and after being one of these neshamos to tell you for as long as I can remember, and going through many of the processes that your children are going through, and coming out having interacted with the tzaddikim that saved my life and continue to save my life each and every minute of each and every day, and from the standpoint of being Isaac with these neshamos to tell you in one form or another, whether they're young or whether they're older, in every form that Baruch Hashem I'm privileged to go around speaking this language to, I can tell you this, from my understanding, is what's going on. And when we know what's going on, so then we begin to understand, even though it requires us to go out of our comfort zone. But like I said, you've all been already pushed way out of your comfort zone, so that's not the Indian. You're already out. So once you're out, so be out, Mamish, be out, meaning to say, be people that are open and receptive to the aura of the Geula. What I'm telling you now is not Shema, it's not a Svara. I'm telling you Bari Adiv. This is what's going on. This is what works. This is what's mekarev. This is what's speaking to the dar. Now, when will the schools begin to mainstream this and bring it into the to the curriculum? I hope sooner than ever. I hope sooner than later. But eventually, they're going to be forced to, because there will be no students left. Meaning the destruction will be so clear. Maybe it's already happening, huh? What are you saying? No students left. Yeah, meaning. Yes. I mean that. I mean that. If you would know, I'm not going to say now. I just was in a local school. If you would hear questions, a very good local school that the kids are asking. Not a few kids that are struggling. The mainstream regular kid. I'm not talking about a school. I'm not gonna bother you now with the questions they were asking. Yeah, there are going to be no students left. They will wholesale reject the system, and they're right to.
Huh?
That's exact. That's it. That's what's happening. So if we don't begin to expand and play offense instead of just defense by doubling down and closing up and shutting out, and there's going to be nothing left. There's going to be nothing left, and all that will remain are those that got wise, that got smart early, like the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh did, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe did, and all these tzaddikim did. So it takes humility, it takes bittul. That's what iskarvus to tzaddikim is. It's bittul. It takes being mevatel ourselves to these tzaddikim, and to see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing an incredible thing. This is not a time to cry. This is a time to dance. This is the final gilui of all of history was leading to this. So it's the hepich of what we think. This is what our Babas and Zaydas lived and died for? Yes, this is it. They preserved Yiddishkeit throughout Gullus for this moment where we're on the threshold of Geula. So we should bring neshamas into the world who are bursting with this energy, that if channeled appropriately and if dealt with in the right way, will bring a tremendous light to the world. So going back to the initial question with this one, Mamash, and how do we feel as parents, of coming into Kabbalah Satorah when our children, seem to have rejected it? I say, lahepich, lahepich, lahepich. You come to the foot of Har Sinai, not the Har Sinai of old. You stand holding hands with your children with these special neshamos titayu at the foot of the Har Sinai of the Torah Chadashim. You stand arm in arm with these neshamos that mean ketzef because of the pain that they're subjected to, even if they're not conscious of what's going on a neshama level, that they're overwhelmed with tears in one way or another, however that expresses itself, and you hold them with the revelation of the gilui, of the aravash of adas, of that light, of the love that's beyond any kalim, that's being revealed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu now into creation at the foot of the Har Sinai of the Torah Chadashim Yi'iti Teitzei. And you say, now we're in new territory, but we are bringing the Geula, me and you. You say that. You look them in the eyes. I'm sure you've said that already. This is the light of the redemption. This is the light of the Geula. Parents who are finding it within themselves to shake off the smaller ideas and to find the strength within to reveal the greatest revelation of godliness that ever was and ever will be, which is the greatest mahu afata, right? Kirachim aval banim. Okay, we should be Zarech of Ezra Hashem's big ideas. Take the papers with you, review them, because this you should keep in your wallet. Really, I mean, this is it. I would say, no, this is it. This is it. We're the mothers and we're the fathers of neshamas to tell you. Ezra Hashem, we should see that within that not that the tayyudniks should come back to tikkun. We don't want that. I always tell them we're not coming back home. We're going forward home. Not going back home. We can't go back to what was. If any of us think that what we want is that we just want our little shlemula back, no, that would be squashing them. We want them to lead the way. We want them to go forward home. But as Hashem, they should find the right teachers and the right influences and the right guides that see them for who they are. And Be'ezus Hashem, we should hold on to their coattails as they soar toward the Geula and to the tikkun of the world. Be'ezus Hashem, the binyan by Shlishi b'mher b'yameinu. Amen. Be'ezus Hashem.